Hi everyone, welcome to the last monthly wrap up of 2023. I can't believe it. I am cozy today because I just got home from the States. And I'll show you footage. It is snowing so hard. I had to ask Kurt if this was like my Californian view of snow, but he said no, even by Korean standards, this is a lot of snow. And it's my birthday tomorrow. I'm a New Year's Eve baby, so I'm very excited to have a snowy birthday 3-day weekend. So, yeah, we're just wrapping up the end of the year really well. And the last two books that I read, literally finished one last night at 3 a.m., were excellent. So, it's been a rough year for books. I'm going to talk about it more in my best books and worst books videos of 2023. But I'm glad that it ended on a solid, on a good note. So we're going to dive in. I read quite a bit. This was actually a really weird month now that I'm looking at the list, but I'm excited to share with you. But first, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this video, Book of the Month. Yes, indeed. Book of the Month, as you know, it is a subscription service where you can subscribe and then you are able to pick from their selection of books every month, 1, 2, or more titles, and you get them for a controlled price. So they're all going to be new releases, hardcovers, and they're all going to be at an incredible price. They have a team of readers who comb through the new releases and pick their books for the month. I have had some of my favorite books of many years come from Book of the Month. I really trust them, and they have a January code, which is right here. For January, the code is for your first book for $5. And I will also leave it down below, so be sure to check that out. What did I get? They have some really good picks for January. The Bullet Swallower as my first one. This is a kind of historical family drama that is loosely based off of the author's great-grandfather. It's a little bit out of my like usual reading comfort zone, so I'm really excited to try that out. And then the last couple of years I have ended December on like solid thrillers. I don't know what it is with like winter releases and a good thriller, but I'm hoping this is going to be another one. This is First Lie Wins. Let me just read you the big blurb. Evie Porter has everything a nice southern girl could want. A doting boyfriend, a house with a white picket fence, a tight group of friends. The only catch? Evie Porter doesn't exist. So yeah, she has some like mysterious job. I don't know. I want to go in knowing not a whole lot. So once again, there will be a code for you down below for a huge discount on your first book. So definitely check them out. Thank you so much to Book of the Month, as always, for sponsoring this. And yeah, let's actually, one of my favorite books of the month was a Book of the Month pick for September. Look at that. So thank you in more ways than one, Book of the Month. That's that. Info in the description box. Now we begin. So I'm not going to go into all of the torture that I put myself through when I read a bunch of Christmas romantic comedies. I made a video about it. It was a really rough time. But the two that I want to talk about, they're by the same author. If you are still looking for a kind of Christmas themed romance, I have recently discovered the work of Catherine Walsh. I read Holiday Romance and Snowed In. These were just, they did exactly what I wanted them to do. They were non-toxic, they felt realistic, but also laugh out loud funny. Like the characters, I felt like they could be real people, but they were also just like so hilarious, like so witty. The conflicts and just, I don't know, the family dynamics, they were just all silly enough that they were definitely like rom-coms. Okay, this is fiction, but it didn't feel, I don't know, there was so much reality to it. I really loved it, laughed out loud multiple times for both books. And the author just seems really lovely. I followed her on Instagram and she speaks the way that she writes. So like her Instagram stories are hilarious because she just has this way of writing that is so funny. So, yeah, definitely. I think she also has other work that isn't Christmas themed, but I have only read her Christmas books. And they're on Kindle Unlimited. Highly recommend. Snowed In, Holiday Romance. Snowed In is fake dating and it's tad bit smuttier. Holiday Romance technically comes first, even though I read it second, and that is friends to lovers, I suppose. Yeah, just great. Just great. A wonderful way to start the month. After that, I read a book that was highly anticipated. I've been waiting for it on hold since before the book was even released, but I'm not going to be talking about it because it is published by Wednesday Books and St. Martin's Press. I will link some stuff down below, but influencers are currently boycotting St. Martin's Press. I will, instead of explaining it poorly, I will just link down below, but essentially this is a marketing boycott, not a reader boycott. So if you are a reader, you can definitely still purchase the books, enjoy them, it's fine, I did. But because it's a marketing boycott, influencers are just not promoting these books until St. Martin's Press responds to very reasonable demands, because the incident specifically had to deal with their influencer relations and making it a very not safe space for our Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim influencers and authors. So yeah, it's a bummer that I can't talk about it. Hopefully someday I can tell you about it if St. Martin's Press gets their shit together. Maybe. So that's that. You can look up hashtag SpeakUpSMP, or again, I'll link some stuff down below. But next up is a DNF, and I'm still thinking about this book. I think it just didn't come at the right time. This was a very convoluted book, but I think if I just had the time to commit to it, I could love it. So this is A Dark and Hollow Star. I believe it was compared to Shadowhunters plus A Cruel Prince, maybe? I don't remember exactly what it is. This book, think of how crazy convoluted, if you've read Shadowhunters and you know the Dark Artifices series, where we've got the Fae, we've got the, this, that, and the other thing. A Dark and Hollow Star is very similar. So this takes place in Toronto, which I just love. And we follow a cast of characters that I had read to about 40, almost 50%, and they were just meeting up. This is a trilogy, it's finished, but we've got gods, we've got like immortal gods, but then we've also got immortal fae, but then we've also got, are there other people? There's like humans, there's like half fae people. I don't know, it was very confusing, and to be honest, I don't even really remember what they were trying to do. But it was kind of a good time. It was very much like this urban fantasy that had potential. Yeah, let me know. What did my notes say? That's what it was. The reason this book took me so long, I think it's 600 pages or something. The reason this book took me so long to get through is because every person, every room that they walk into, any like new visual thing is described so much. I'm okay with description. I love setting the scene. I love a book that gives you a really strong visual, but you don't need to, like, every room you walk into, tell me the color of the floor, the walls, the curtains, the furniture. Like, it was too much. And so the book ended up feeling really long because it was like, if we were walking through the palace, literally it was like the hallway, paragraph, and then they walk into the room, it was a little too much. So if it was just edited down a little bit, I feel like I could have gotten to the plot faster and been less likely to DNF it. But just as it was, nothing was really happening yet, and I was tired, and I had a lot of stuff going on in December, so I put it down. But let me know your thoughts. I'd be willing to pick it back up. It just not this month. That was A Dark and Hollow Star. After that, really quickly, I did read Swordheart. I am continuing my T. Kingfisher marathon. This is truly the year of T. Kingfisher. Swordheart is, I don't know if it is in the world of The Clockwork Boys. Basically, if you're not new to this channel, this has been like a months and months and months phenomenon, but I have read her series Paladin's, I forget what they're called, but it's Paladin's Grace, Paladin's Strength, Paladin's Hope, and then we have the Clockwork Boys, the Wonder Engine, and now we have Swordheart. They all take place kind of in this world, and to be honest, they're all pretty repetitive in terms of their tropes and stuff like that, but Swordheart was slightly different, and I think it was quite a good time. This was quite short. It's a fantasy romance. We follow a woman who is trapped in this really horrible situation where her family is trying to essentially either kill her or marry her off so that they can get her inheritance. And when she's trying to defend herself, she accidentally finds a magical sword. And it's not a sword, it's a man. It's hard to explain, but basically it's a magical sword where the person who wields it has this magical bodyguard man, and they go on a little adventure together. And it was just cute. I literally just wrote, fine, interesting concept. The man is in a sword, LOL. And that's pretty much it. It was fine. Again, I think that I would really recommend spacing out this particular vein of T. Kingfisher content. I actually just got A House with Good Bones out from the library, and that I know is going to be very different from this particular avenue of her work. Try to space out the books within this world because they are quite like this gruff, awkward man, warrior guy with a lot of honor and stuff, pining over equally strong women. You can only read that so many times in a row. So I did enjoy Swordheart, but I'm still gonna say, of the world, Paladin's Grace is still my favorite. I think just because it was the first taste of this. Still highly recommend if you want a quick standalone fantasy. You don't really need any world background. Just read about a man in a sword. Enjoy. Next up, oh my gosh, I am so pleased that I loved this one. I read The Unmaking of June Farrow. I really love this author, but I'm gonna be honest, I didn't love, I think it was her most recent adult fantasy, which was Spells for Forgetting. Like, ironically, it was kind of a forgettable story, very atmospheric, but like just didn't quite hit as much as her other work has hit for me. So I went into The Unmaking of June Farrow like hopeful but without very high expectations, and I really enjoyed it. This is a standalone, is it fantasy technically? We follow a woman, how do I explain this without spoiling it? Oh my god, I should have thought of this. So we follow a woman named June Farrow, and she comes from a long line of women who have unfortunately all kind of succumbed to this madness. And when we meet up with her, her kind of symptoms are starting to get worse, and we start to learn what causes these symptoms. Oh my gosh, how do I not spoil this? Let me look up how it's described on Goodreads. Okay. So, basically her whole life is kind of a mystery because her mom just disappeared, and she was raised by her grandma, and then her grandma recently passed away, and she's dealing with just kind of living on her own. And then she gets a cryptic message from her grandma that she had mailed to her, and she starts to realize what might be causing this madness of the Pharaoh women, and where her mom might be, and where June herself might have come from. This book was, I think, pretty perfect. I finished reading it feeling like I wanted it to be longer, like I wanted more of it, but it was more in a sense of like, I just loved the concept, I loved the characters, and I just wanted more. And I think that that's a good thing, rather than I feel like this is the year of books being too long, and this one was like, it told me the story, and then I just wanted so much more, and I ended up just thinking about the book so much more because my brain wanted to fill in blanks. I highly recommend it, and I have heard, because I posted about it on Instagram a couple weeks ago, I got a lot of feedback that the audiobook is incredible. So if you're looking for a new audiobook, apparently The Unmaking of June Farrow did an excellent job. Yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but I highly recommend. I went into it with very low expectations, and I ate it up in like one day. I was on the bus and I was just like consuming it. So the unmaking of June Farrow. After that, I finally got Penance from the library. This, I went into it not knowing anything about it, and I was so drawn in. This is a book about a crime that is committed in a little seaside town in the UK. A young girl is murdered by a bunch of her friends, and we basically follow this investigative reporter who is obsessed with the case and trying to write a book about it. But it also includes tidbits from various true crime podcasts and stuff like that, and we essentially just get interviews from all the different people who are involved. I really enjoyed it, but I will say that it got a little difficult to read just because a lot of the characters are like insufferable teenage girls. Overall, I thought it was really interesting thinking about like obsession, and like we shame these girls for being kind of dark and obsessive, but aren't we dark and obsessive because we're reading this book about true crime and all of this stuff? But then also they talked about how true crime can be comforting for some people, thinking that like evil is so monotonous and just like horrible things happen all the time and life still goes on. So maybe that helps you if you've been through I don't know. Like there were a lot of really interesting things that you can pick apart in this book. I will say it felt a little long just because it was rough to read. This one definitely took me a lot of time. I had to put it down and return to it. It's difficult to describe, but it definitely made me want to pick up more work by this author. That was Penance. Oh my, next up, I don't even know how I found this, why I picked it up, why I read it. I'm not even sure I liked it, to be honest. I read Magma. It's a very short story by an Icelandic poet about a abusive relationship, and it's really just that. Like, we just watch a girl date this man who's kind of horrible and then just gets progressively more horrible, and it just shows how and why she can't really leave. It's very dark, and I, again, don't know how or why I found it, but it's like 100 pages, and so I needed to know what happened at the end, and I'm not sure I liked it. I think there were a couple passages, I'm not sure if it was worth it to read 100-something pages of just like abuse to get those few insights. But if you're looking for a short, horribly sad, graphic book, there's Magma. After that, based on your recommendations, I picked up A Fate of Wrath and Flame. I actually made a TikTok about it. Yes, I'm on TikTok now. Isn't that scary? Where I'm basically asking if anybody can convince me not to DNF the rest of the series. I thought the first book was interesting, but I just have no desire to read, like, to continue the series, and I don't know why. It's a fantasy that we begin in New York City. We follow a girl who is working for a crime boss as a thief, and she ends up running into a woman who has a job for her, and it ends with her getting sent to another dimension, into this fantasy land where magic is real. There are like elves, I think they are, or something like that. But what was so cool is that when she gets sent there, she wakes up in like a maze or like a garden of a castle, looks down, and she is herself. She's in a weird dress, but like she is herself. And she realizes everyone is chasing after her because whoever her body was a couple seconds ago, she just assassinated the royal family. So she's basically, this girl from New York City is just dropped into the middle of this crazy plot, and she has to convince everybody that she's not the person that they think she is. She also was whoever her body was previously was engaged to the prince who's now king, and there's like some tension there. And then there's this whole prophecy that I don't know, it had so many interesting details that I really enjoyed, but I just, for the life of me, cannot care to see where this goes. And I don't know, I'm bummed because that just seems like, as I'm explaining it, like that sounds so fun, but it was just lacking something. And then where the plot kind of ended, for the first book, it wasn't a point where I was like, ooh, I gotta know what happens next. I was sort of like, I can put this down and maybe come back to it. Yeah, let me know if you've continued it. I've heard a lot of people say the second book isn't it, but the third book is good. And I'm not sure if I'm willing to read an entire book just to get to the next book that's good, you know? So let me know your thoughts. That is A Fate of Wrath and Flame. Next up, really quickly, I read How to Be Eaten. This is a modern take on fairy tales where we essentially have a bunch of our favorite fairy tales like Rumpelstiltskin, Little Red Riding Hood, etc., Bluebeard's wife. And they all come together for a big old therapy session, and they essentially just talk about their stories and what has happened to them, but like in a very modern sense. Like Bluebeard's wife, Bluebeard is like this weird kind of Elon Musk-esque tech weirdo, who, I mean, if you know the story of Bluebeard's wife, like he's right? So they all had this modern twist, but it was all really about public opinion and not really tabloid culture, but just like what happens when your story becomes bigger than you, and like your story kind of runs away from you. Yeah, I can't really explain it, but it was a really quick read and I thought it was really good. I thought each character was very interesting. So if you're interested in like a little bit of feminine rage with a touch of modern day fairy tale, How to Be Eaten. Next up, I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble for this. I have just realized that this author and I will never get along. So I guess last year in September or October, I read The Dead Romantics and I did not like it at all. And so when I saw people raving about The 7-Year Slip, I decided to give her another shot. And I read to about 20% and I was like, still the same, not good. Put the book down, opened Instagram, and I saw 2 different people that I love, respect, and trust raving about this book, talking about how it made them sob, how it broke them, how they loved it. And so I picked the book up again and I was like, I'm gonna finish it. I'm gonna see what this is all about. Still such a no. I don't know what I'm missing. Like The 7-Year Slip is about a girl who lives in this apartment with her aunt in New York City. Her aunt passed away and the girl is just kind of trying to go through life. She's sort of happy, but she's working at like a book publisher. But that's not her dream job, and she's just kind of going through the motions. And her aunt always talked about how the apartment was magic, and when you need it most, the magic will happen. And the magic is essentially that the apartment can time travel, I guess. Like when you open the door, sometimes there will be a 7-year difference. So she opens the door one day, and this guy is in her apartment, and he's like, oh, hey, your aunt told me that I could stay here over summer. I'm moving to the city, and she's a family friend and said I could live here. Is that okay? And they essentially are roommates, but she is bouncing back and forth between present day and the past. It was just so corny, and just like they literally went from her thinking that he was an intruder going to kill her to slow dancing in the kitchen and being like, FYI, I don't want this to get messy, so like we can't sleep together. Within like a couple hours, like in one day, they have like this intense attraction to it. It was just so cheesy. It was just not it. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, what I'm not seeing, what I'm not reading. It was a struggle to finish it, but I did. And I don't know why I did, but that's The 7-Year Slip. Please let me know your thoughts down below. Please tell me I'm not crazy. If you didn't like it, please let me know, because I hate it when I feel like I'm the only person who didn't enjoy a book, especially when, again, people I love loved the book. So if you're like me, you're not alone. We are few, but not alone. That's the 7-year slip. And after that, I read a book of the month pick for September, Evil Eye. This was a book that is not typically my style. It's very just a contemporary drama. It's about a woman who is Palestinian American. She grew up in Brooklyn and she got married and kind of saw that as her way out of, even though she lived in Brooklyn, like it was a very tight-knit community that she like never even really went into Manhattan. Like she just felt very, very stuck in life. And so when she gets married, she thinks like, oh, this is my ticket out. She moves to North Carolina. She wants to be an artist. And we meet up with her quite a few years later when she is a mother of 2 daughters. She is trying to be an art teacher at the local college, but she's essentially given like one throwaway intro class and then asked to be like the graphic designer for the school. She's just so tired. She's in a deep depression. Her mother-in-law is really annoying. And there's an incident at school where she snaps after a series of micro/macro aggressions by her coworkers, and she's forced to go to therapy at school. And through that, she starts to journal. She starts to reflect on her past, especially surrounding her mother. She tries to figure out, like, is she stuck in this life forever? What can she do? Yeah, I just thought overall it was really good. I enjoyed a lot of the characters. Kind of a frustrating read because there were so many points where she started to doubt herself and be like, no, I should be grateful for, I'm just the ungrateful one in this situation. And you just wanted to be like, girl. But yeah, still frustrating, but a very beautiful read. Evil Eye. After that, I finally read, I feel like the end of the year, December is when I try and sit down and be like, these were books on your TBR, read them by the end of the year. So that's why you're going to see kind of a weird mix of genres this month. I finally read The Virgin Suicides. I have seen the movie countless times, and honestly, the book is very, almost word for word, similar to the film, but this was really gorgeous, and I think that reading it as the book, I was able to make so many more connections and just like question more things. This is like when people say that they love literary fiction, like this is the kind of book I'm thinking of. A lot of times when I read certain books in the lit fic genre, I'm kind of left feeling like, what was this saying? Like, what questions am I even supposed to be asking about this book? But this and Penance were just so interesting and like tickled my brain in such a fantastic way. I will say though that because this is meant to take place in the, is it the 70s? The 80s? And it is narrated by the young boys. I'll tell you the plot in a second. It's narrated by the young boys of the neighborhood. There is the use of the R word quite a lot, referring to a specific character. And then there is one instance, I was very surprised, there's one instance of the N word, not referring to a character, but like a concept. But it's still in there, and so just wanted to warn you. But The Virgin Suicides is about this family of girls who are just, they're all so beautiful and magnetic, and the neighborhood boys are kind of obsessed with them, and one by one they commit suicide. It's just about like one sister kills herself first, and so we follow this kind of obsession and just kind of circus that follows them, and how they are more and more trapped in their homes due to their like very controlling parents. I can't even really explain it, but it was just so interesting. And even like the narrators, how they're talking about, we just wish that they knew how much we loved them, but did they even love them? Because it really felt like they didn't know anything about them. Like it's just a really interesting book that I highly recommend. Obviously check trigger warnings, it's graphic, but really excellent, and the film is also great. So, The Virgin Suicides. After that, I picked up a very short, very strange book called Y/N or Your Name. This is about K-pop in a weird way. We follow a Korean American who is living in Germany, and her roommate is obsessed with this K-pop boy group that is not specifically supposed to be BTS, but like very BTS-esque. Our main girl hates K-pop, just like on principle. She thinks she's like a philosophy student. She thinks that this is very below her, but her roommate has an extra ticket to a concert, and our girl goes and falls in love with one member in particular, and it becomes incredibly obsessive. She starts to write fanfic. The author's thoughts on obsession and parasocial relationships I thought were so interesting. In the beginning, I read about 60%, fell asleep, had a dream about BTS, which was strange, and then the next day I continued reading it and it got really weird. So we end up following her as she goes to Seoul to try to find this member of this group and stuff like that. From that point, it gets a little weird, and honestly, I didn't love it, but I do think that I would say first 60% had just really interesting thoughts on parasocial relationships, especially like idol and fan relationships. They do live streams a lot of the time, and just like talking about that I thought was so interesting. Overall, I wouldn't say I would recommend the book from front to back, but I do think there was a lot of really interesting things, especially if you know the K-pop industry, know the lengths that that companies go to make their groups lovable and like obsessive obsession inspiring. Really interesting. So that is Your Name. And then I headed home. I had a 13-hour flight one way, a 16-hour flight the other way, and as you know, all I do on airplanes is read. What did I finish? I got Heavenly Bodies from Kindle Unlimited. This was recommended to me by a lot of you guys. This is another one where I'm like not ready to dive into the second one. I thought that the way that it ends, however, was really good. I think if it had a different ending, I would have not enjoyed this book at all, but I think that it had a little twist that I think was really excellent. This is a kind of enemies to lovers fantasy romance with a lot of mythology and political intrigue. It's about a girl who is the princess of a court, and the court has been overthrown by a star. So there are like the stars that are kind of like gods, and then there's the humans that have various kingdoms, right, that worship the gods. So one of the gods, a star, comes down, kills her whole damn family, and takes over her kingdom. She runs away and tries to seek shelter in another kingdom, and they are tentatively allies. They kind of train together to hopefully get her kingdom back. I'm not explaining it very well, but it was totally fine. It felt very fan fiction-y, and I don't mean that as a negative thing. It just felt very dialogue heavy. It was very focused on just their back and forth. It felt quite cheesy, especially like the love confessions and stuff like that. But I thought that the characters were fine, and I thought that the kind of mythology to it was well thought out and quite interesting. And again, I think that the way that it ended makes me interested in reading the second one, but not quite yet. I've read about 10% of the second book. It was imperfect. There were also, this is a self-published, I believe, work. So there were like random spelling mistakes and stuff. If you're just looking for a new fantasy to pick up, it wasn't bad. It wasn't knock my socks off gonna be my favorite of the year, but it did the job, and it's on Kindle Unlimited. I actually surprisingly remember a lot of the plot, which is nice. So that was Heavenly Bodies. After that, I'm on an airplane, so you know I'm gonna read rom-coms. I picked up Wildfire, which is the second book, not the sequel, but it is related to the world of Icebreaker, which I read on an airplane in October. And like didn't hate Icebreaker. I feel like I had airplane brain when I read this, and I was just sort of like, please distract me. I will read anything. So at the time I was like, you know, it did the job, it's fine. It held my attention for almost 400 pages, and it passed quite a few hours, and it was okay. And I still kind of stand by that. I do think that the more that I think about it, it was not the best. This follows a different member of the hockey team who is working a summer job at a summer camp. Imagine his surprise when all the camp counselors get together at orientation the first day and he sees a girl that he goes to college with and he hooked up with, which is not something that he does. And she ghosted him. Like, they hooked up, he went to the bathroom, and he came back into his bedroom, and she was gone. It's a dual POV, so we know her whole story as well, but they essentially have to deal with working together for a whole summer with very strict rules of absolutely no romantic business going on between the camp counselors, but they just get along so well and they're so attracted to each other. So I think that I liked a lot of it. I liked a lot of the beginning. I think that Russ is a very interesting character because even though he's like a hockey player who can throw his romantic partners around and all this stuff, he's also really shy. He has a lot of insecurities. He is not a social person. I feel like a lot of romances make the male romantic lead always be like this effortlessly charming character, but he's very, like, in a crowd, he's very much like, you know, which was refreshing. They both have like family issues and they talk about that, which I really enjoyed, like, because they weren't allowed to have any romantic relations. They ended up just talking to each other a lot more, which I appreciated. I just think it got a little cheesy, a little too long, and Hannah Grace's epilogues are so bad. Like, Icebreaker's epilogue was so stupid. The epilogue to this book was equally stupid. Like, I just don't know why she does this. She needs to give you a happy ending, but like too happy. Obscenely happy. And she could have just left us without an epilogue and I would have been so fine with it. But the epilogue is just like she needs to put a final nail in the coffin and it just ruins it for me. So I would say, like, Wildfire did have quite a few pluses, quite a few pros, had quite a few cons, specifically that epilogue. It wasn't horrible, but I just think that it could have had a lot less. And then after that, I read Into the Weeds. For my Christmas rom-com marathon, I reread Lovelight Farms, which I enjoyed. It was fine. Into the Weeds is the sequel to that. So in Lovelight Farms, we follow a woman who runs a Christmas tree farm, and the entire book revolves around this social media contest where this super huge influencer is going to come visit the farm and do like a spotlight feature on them. And in that book, we see that the social media influencer seems to have had a one-night stand with the head farmer of the Christmas tree farm. We don't get any more information than that, but we know there's a story there. And the story is Into the Weeds. So in this book, we follow Evie, who's the influencer, and she is basically fed up, feeling lost, feeling burnt out. This takes place a couple of months after Lovelight Farms. And when she's trying to think of, like, when is the last time I felt good? Like, when's the last time I felt happy? It was when she was at Lovelight Farms in this adorable tiny town. She just kind of drops off the grid and goes back there. And we end up learning more about the relationship between her and the farmer. I liked it in the moment, like as I was reading it, because again, I had airplane brain. It was fine, but the more that I think about it, the more that I did not like this book at all. It was heavy on the miscommunication trope. And by miscommunication, I mean no communication. These are two adults who, like, do not ever speak to each other. Like, I don't understand the attraction they feel. Like, they're so attracted to each other, but they have, like, not had conversations. Like, they just don't talk. They just kind of moodily walk around each other and, like, yearn. But it's like, I don't know. It was very strange. And then there were just some character inconsistencies going from, like, Lovelight Farms to Into the Weeds that bothered me a little bit. I will say that the main male character is similar to Wildfire, not a, like, overly charming character that, you know, can just charm the pants off of anybody. He hates crowds. He has issues with sounds, and he just kind of wants to be by himself in the quiet. He's carrying a lot on his shoulders. And yeah, so he was a kind of somewhat refreshing male lead. I still think that there were too many inconsistencies though. Will also say that it has this thing that I hate that books do, that is, they hold on to this one phrase and say it throughout the book, trying to make it, it's not an inside joke. If it was an inside joke, that'd be funny, but this is just like, I don't want to say the exact phrase, but if you have read, unfortunately, if you have read It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, they are so attached to keep on swimming from Finding Nemo. So like anytime they have a moment that's supposed to be like, wow, we're so connected, I know you so deeply on an emotional level, the characters will say to each other, just keep swimming. And it's supposed to be like I don't even know what emotion I'm supposed to get out of it, but Into the Weeds has something very similar to like just keep swimming, and they say it a lot, and it irked me so much. So overall, did not enjoy Into the Weeds, but I do love how she writes, especially the characters just of the small town. I love the neighbors. So it wasn't unreadable, but it just was not good. I was Into the Weeds. Really quickly, while I was home for Christmas, I ended up rereading A Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I talked about this before, that I wanted to try to do more rereads of comfort reads. A Daughter of Smoke and Bone is, how do I describe this? I don't want to give too much away, but it deals with a different dimension. It deals with angels and demons and chimera, and yeah, I'm not going to tell you too much, but that was a reread and I really enjoyed it. I will say that the dialogue does feel like very young adult. Like they make jokes about her best friend sees her best friend's ex-boyfriend and she wants to fill a balloon with urine and throw it at him. Like those kind of jokes, right? It's a little juvenile, but then something happens and that quickly switches and the whole story changes. So yeah, it definitely read like younger than I remember, but I still just really enjoyed it. Daughter of Smoke and Bone. After that, I read a duology. I reread the first book and then I read the finale. But again, this is by Wednesday Books / not Wednesday, but by St. Martin's Press, which again, we're not talking about. Links will be down below as to why. And I also really want to talk about it because I have a hot take, but that will have to be saved for another time. So if you want to comment, let St. Martin's Press know that you want to know my hot takes on things, maybe leave a comment on their Instagram. And then we enter the last 2 books of the month that were fantastic. And the first one is actually a short story. It's 30 pages long and it is The 6 Deaths of the Saint or a Saint. So good. I really enjoyed 10,000 Doors of January. I read it quite a few years ago. So I know that I love this author's writing, and I was sort of like, what is she gonna do in 30 pages? And she wrote an epic story that had betrayal, mythology, kind of, an incredible, heartbreaking romance. Like, there was so much in these 30 pages that I loved it. I would have loved to read this as a novel. This could have been like a 600-page novel that rocked my world, but instead she just cut it down to 30 pages and I still felt all the emotions. And because it was so short, again, kind of like the Unmaking of June Farrow, because I wanted more, I ended up just mentally returning to the story and using my imagination to expand it and think about it, and I just loved it. So if you are in a reading slump, it's on Kindle Unlimited, and the Kindle Unlimited also includes an audiobook, I believe. If you just want to try and get yourself out of a reading slump and you don't have time to commit to a long book, 30 pages, so good. I don't even want to tell you what it's about. It's just a little teeny tiny fantasy. I don't know how she did it. Truly so excellent. The 6 Deaths of a Saint. And finally, the last book, the book that I read until 3:30 a.m. last night. This is All of Us Villains. This is a duology. It's finished. I am so excited to finish filming this video so that I can go and finish the duology. Oh, this book was so good. I'm so glad. I think I got this from Lexi. She talked about it, and otherwise I would have never heard about it, so thank you so much. This reminds me a lot of A Deadly Education with like a touch of the Hunger Games and maybe a little bit of Vicious by V.E. Schwab. If you like any of those, the book takes place in this particular city called Invernath, I think. Not Inverness, Invernath. Basically, there are these 7 families that live in the city and they control the high magic. There's this whole history to it, but basically they put a curse on themselves so that every 20 years there is a tournament, and it's basically a kind of Hunger Games situation. It's to the death. Each family puts in a volunteer. Whichever one wins, that family gets to control the high magic for 20 years. And if nobody wins, if they try to be like, we're not going to kill each other, then everybody dies and nobody controls the magic for 20 years. So it's like kill or be killed situation. So we follow a group of these teenagers as they enter the competition. I thought it was so good. I thought that just the way that magic is talked about, the whole like they need to recharge their magic and stuff like that, so they aren't just like willy-nilly throwing magic around. I don't know. It was just really good, and I am so interested in the second book. I think it's going to be great. Just highly recommend. It was easy to read, and it was just really good. I love all the characters. It's multiple POV. Yeah, I'm so interested in so many different things, like what's going to happen. So I definitely recommend All of Us Villains, and I'm going to start All of Our Demise, I believe it's called, today. That was what I read in December. Thank you so much for sticking around for all of this. And I'm going to try and be more active on my book talk, so I will link that down below as well. But yeah, I'm gonna try and do more like mini reviews instead of these super long ones on YouTube. I'll still do these obviously, but in case, I don't know, you want a different format, you can find me over there. So once again, thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this. You can check down below. You can either use my code CARI or the January code, which is right here, to get your first book for one low controlled price. New releases, hardcovers, excellent. My camera battery is dying. I will see you guys in the next year. My next video will be best books of 2023, and thank you so much as always. Hope you had a great reading year. I'll see you guys next time. Love you always. Bye.